In this episode, we're diving into leadership styles from transformational visionaries to crisis commanding rock stars. We're going to explore leadership flavors that are hotter than your morning coffee and maybe, just as likely to spill all over your day. So buckle up, EMS folks, as we get scattered, smothered, and covered in leadership magic.
Welcome to the EMS Wizard podcast, where we are going to be looking at, as Terry has already mentioned, different styles of leadership. And is there one that is all good? Is there one that is all bad? Or is it possible that you need a bunch of those? I really don't know the answer to that. So that's what we'll look at. We'll try to figure out exactly what are the strengths and weaknesses in the different leadership styles that we possess, maybe that we use, maybe that we've experienced in our EMS careers.
I think it's like my hash browns when I go to the Waffle House. I like them scattered, smothered, and covered. Sometimes I like them capped. I don't know.
I feel like that violates every HR policy ever put in place if I go in there with a leadership style where I'm going to smother and cover you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why you can't use it every time.
I
That's
don't know
why
if
that's
you
why
can
you've
use
got
it
to
at
take
all.
you've got to take pieces of each.
You're saying there needs to be a good mix,
Correct.
depending on
Correct.
the vibe, the
Yeah,
mood.
Kathia understands. She's picking up what I'm putting down, whereas you are
I am.
literal, Wilson, which is weird. She understands my allegory.
But
There needs to be a
over
good,
over medium eggs is not the same for everyone either. It's not
uh,
just hash browns.
This is
it's
correct.
not.
So,
I mean,
so we could say that some of this is in that short order cook. How are you serving up? How are you serving it up?
Well, that's
Do
what
you
we're
know
talking
your
about.
people?
What's the positive in how you serve whatever it is you're serving? Maybe I, I will say that I was probably doing leadership things, manager. I think a lot of folks, especially in EMS, end up in managerial roles before they know they have a managerial style. Like they just don't know. And they are a certain way. And was that developed by someone else that also did not know what their style was or that they had one? And it was, I've heard this several times from just over the years of teaching officer classes. And that is until you guys said something about a leadership style, I didn't know I had one. I didn't know there was one. I was me and I applied it that way.
So I think that's probably the first leadership style is that situational leadership. So we're adapting our style. What is the team's competence? What are the demands of the situation? What do our people need? And so that's probably the first thing to look at with that.
They're looking at that, but if they come in not knowing that and they're only looking at it through literally the one lens of how they do things, they're assessing things not for what the team needs, but how do I respond as a manager? Like they're looking at it as a here's a problem. I don't know how to deal with this, or I do know how to deal with this. This is how I deal with it. And then they find out later that maybe there's different styles. So maybe we should go in and pick different styles and talk about when this is applied and what's good and bad about it. No,
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
You said you're transformational. Go with that one. What's so special about the transformational?
I think I said situational.
Situational too, then.
Yeah. I mean,
You're transformational.
yes. You are transforming tomorrows out there. You are leading the way.
Walter's
Uh,
transforming to Mars. I lead the way.
yeah, that's something like that. So that's situational. Hey, I am flexible. I'm looking to say, hey, what is this situation? Maybe what are the competencies of my folks? So when you get into that unpredictable situation, you're in a mass casualty situation. You're kind of, if I'm in that mass casualty situation, and if it's Walter, Kathia, and Lord help us, sweet, sweet Heavenly Father, if it's the four of us, then I think we're able to manage that. And so where we talk about that unpredictable situation, that the four of us are going to be able to manage our sectors, whatever that is, versus, hey, we've got three folks that just finished, and any one of the four of us is partnered up with some new EMT or EMT advanced or paramedic. we might have to be a little bit more hands-on in that situation. And so you've got to balance the autonomy for that individual with whatever guidance that you can give them.
Speaking
So
autocratic, like changing styles.
you might have to be a more autocratic, because if I'm on that scene, and this is one of my quote, I'm on that scene with that EMT and the scene's not safe, we haven't secured it, we're in that roadway mass casualty incident, and we haven't stopped the flow of traffic. Well, I might be autocratic because I might yell at hey, stop, get out, get over here. And in that case, I'm gonna shift to what that individual, what their need is at that moment.
Their need or how they're going to respond to your direction.
Possibly both. I mean, I think it's fair to say both, for whatever their need is, and then part of that is what is that? How are they going to respond to that? So I'm going to shift that, and with that regular partner, you might shift that based on the day, based upon the mood, based upon whatever else.
Safety puts you in that autocratic place too, right? Like when you know there's an absolute safety concern, you're going to be
Correct.
very direct, and it's like, you've got your reason for this. I don't have time to give you a safety class right now, so we're going to have to do it this way, and we'll get feedback later. I could see that being a shift, when things like that, or if it's of a confidential nature and you're having to shut something down. I see usefulness in that autocratic style, which may lend someone to say, why not always be autocratic? If you take what's the harm in, if I just take whatever the problem is, using an autocratic lens consistently, and coming back, and when I don't know the answer, go get the answer so I can be autocratic about it. What would be some of the weaknesses from that?
Are we not built to be autocratic though? Because we're built in paramedic class to take lead, to be assertive, to be clear and direct and give direction. So we're kind of built like that as providers already.
But because of that, we don't receive information that same way. We're not very receptive to the autocratic style. So,
because if you put two paramedics, if you make a paramedics on a truck, that's where I always jokingly say somebody needs to be the EMT, somebody needs to be in charge, and somebody needs to restock the truck. And I think when we talk with our friends and our neighbors across the state and say, where is the danger? Where's the risk? Man, when I've got two paramedics on the truck, because unless one of them is really good and really adept at being able to be flexible, unless they're that person that's able to figure out the situation and flex one way or another, you get two bullheads hitting up against each other.
Right. Two people can't start the same IV. Two people can't intubate at the same time. Two people can't do CPR at the same time. Two people can't take a blood pressure at the same time.
Yes.
So you have to have that, which is hard. It makes it hard for all of us sometimes to be able to do. But, what are some of the disadvantages of that leadership? Who do I make mad? Who do I aggravate because I'm making those decisions? And Terry, you and I are both paramedics. We're on the truck together today. Who's going to piss who off? Because we're both doing that same thing.
And I think that's where you start to hit some of those cons of that autocratic is, man, if you're just going to tell me what to do, I'm not going to be creative. I'm just, daggone Walter being a jerk again, telling me what to do, and so eventually I'm not going to feel like that valued member of the team.
But if the patient goes, but if the patient goes into defib, we need to shock them now.
Correct.
We don't need to wait. Right.
So that's where I think it's an ingredient. It's the ham, it's the cheese covering my hash browns, but I gotta have a whole bunch of other things in there, including that over medium egg, because I like that yolk, that dippy egg.
But if we look at our workforce and they're in there and they take that same style that you're being autocratic with them, and they take that away, that's how management's going to be to me. This may be one of those things that says, is this my motivator to say, this is not how I want to do it, so this makes me want to now my negative motivation, right? I'm negatively motivated to try to be better than you at something. What do I choose? I'm going to probably choose the extreme and be more democratic, right? So I'm going to look at things from a very, I'm not going to say never make a decision, but what does everyone think about such and such? Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the strengths and some of the weaknesses in the democratic approach style of leadership.
I think there's a time and place to get everybody's opinion.
So give an example, like when's a time to consider when's the democratic style of leadership necessary or best utilized?
I think when it's going to affect the efficiency of the crews and how they're going to run on a daily basis, especially if you're in that admin position, you're not there on the front line and on the trucks. I think everybody should have a few options to choose from at that point because they're the ones that are going to be working whatever system you're trying to implement.
A piece of equipment. Got to
Yeah.
gear and change a piece of equipment. So what are we going to switch to? Because all four of us like something different. So we've got to be able to figure out how we're going to do it, and then we got to let the whole system try to figure that out. So little piece of equipment, a policy change, or transport decisions, or something like that.
Yeah.
I think the danger in this, if I'm the manager and I'm saying, gosh, I'm saying, hey, y'all pick the new monitor defibrillator, y'all pick the new video laryngoscope. A couple of different things is folks are going to roll with whatever you set for them. And if you say, hey, the sky's the limit, but if you say, hey, y'all, this is the budget for this, and so y'all pick this device, y'all pick this video laryngoscope that is $30,000 for each video laryngoscope. I only have $30,000, but if you pick the $10,000 option, we can get three. You pick the $1,000 option, we can get 30. And so I think it does. I feel like I'm collaborating. I feel like I'm, being included, and different folks might have some different experiences, which is we're gonna leverage in those experiences. But I think one of the risks with this is if I'm the EMS manager, and I say but whoever is that EMS manager, they have to start to set some parameters to say, hey, this is what the sandbox is, or these are the limitations, because this runs a risk of, hey, I'm fostering that collaboration inclusiveness, but as soon as I say, hey, we're not doing that because I don't do that, bam, the team gets turned off.
But then you also have to worry about not everybody's going to be happy with whatever decision is made amongst the group. You're going to upset somebody, somebody's going to be disappointed. And that's where, like you're saying, you have to set those parameters and just go participate or don't. But if you don't participate, you're going with the majority. But some people just get upset about that. Yeah. There's always going to be conflict.
Kind of like voting. If you don't vote, then you just have to say that, hey, you went for whatever.
Right.
And I'm not bringing
there's a time and place for democratic leadership.
Right.
So that lends to a lot of folks to sort of turn to another style, which is sort of a coaching piece where folks sort of look at, especially when you're multi-generational, you're dealing with different experience levels, you're dealing with different generations and communication styles, experience levels, just different cultures and things. This usually tends to make this a new leader or someone utilize a coaching modality to sort of use it as a learning tool. I know that I use coaching a lot in the aspect of, hey, I'm trying to get to this finish line here, and you're not getting there. Let me learn a little bit about you, because I don't think, especially when I'm one of those that believes that you don't come to work with the intent of doing a bad job. If you come to work with the intent to do a good job and you're not getting to the finish line with me, my feeling is I'm missing something in the communication cog that isn't getting you to that point. And so I use a lot of those metaphors and things to sort of connect to sort of motivate folks to get to that. Do you see the coaching style of leadership being an effective means or one that gets in the way of more efficient ones?
Is my favorite, because it makes me think, John, when we talk about this, when we're out there spreading the word of leadership, and we talk about the Olympic Dream Team, and we talk about Coach K, and some people believe in Coach K, and some people don't, and so I think
How
the
does
first
last
thing is
game
you
go?
have to
Last
who
game, yeah, last game he ever played. How did he go? Last game he coached.
I
Yeah.
I didn't watch it, so think I think I'll start with the risks of this. I have to believe I have to believe in who the coach is. And I think we see this. I think coaching, if we start to talk about leadership styles that are in fire and EMS and in emergency services in general, you're so stupid. That that, that's a cute sticker. I think if we're talking about this in general, we do this because if Walter is my FTO, he's coaching me. If Kathia is my mentor, if I'm in paramedic class and I'm doing my field internship time, she is coaching me. If I get hired by an agency, Walter is coaching me. I think even in the classroom, John, I'm the student and you're my instructor. You are coaching me in how to do something. And so I think for us in EMS, this is really probably one of our core leadership techniques.
But are they coaching? That's the other thing. If you don't have the coaching mentality, and I'm an FTO, and I only know that one style, I could be very autocratic in the way that I teach you to do the way. Forget everything you know. We're going to do it the XYZ EMS way here, and I'm going to show you that. It lends to a little bit of I'm not really coaching. I'm not open to your opinion and things, and I guess that's why I asked that question. Is sounds like you agree there's a place for coaching. The question, I guess, is how does one get it? Where do they, where do you get this coaching modality from? I got it from years of experience and seeing what didn't work. I don't know that the folks coming in leadership now stay long enough to figure that part out.
Mm-mm.
So that's it. So that's where we turn to the one that you always see. I know the NAEMT people course, whatever they call it, they sort of drive you into this servant leadership, and that tends to be the golden answer. Is the go and be a servant leader. We all should think about being a servant leader, and as you've mentioned before, Terry, that may be more of a behavior trait more than is a style, or maybe it's a you can be a certain way and do that, but it does lead me to think: are there weaknesses to being a servant leader, and if so, what are those weaknesses to that? Or we can speak to the strengths as well.
Yeah, I think the servant leadership, part of being a servant leader is people have to trust you. You have to be able to trust them. Sometimes you just have to shut up and listen to what people are trying to say and what people are trying to do. I think you have to have some constant awareness around you of what's going on. And then, you're having to build your team and helping build your team. So, it's all of, and there's more things too. I just summed up a few things, but a lot of those things together and trying to make it work. And, you know, do people realize what they are and what they're not? No, they probably don't unless they come and heard something and try to figure it out. So,
Yeah, but one of my favorite things to describe it is servant leadership. I'm serving my people, where some people think servant leadership is I'm the leader, you're my servant. And so,
correct.
So it's knowing when to be the EMT when there's two paramedics on the truck.
Right.
That's being a servant. That's the way I see being a servant leader, is knowing when to just allow your people to lead and hear them out
Well, I think it
and
focuses on the
facilitate their
team,
needs.
focuses on the team dynamic more so as well too, to serve one another, right? So if you're serving one another, then they're going to continue to serve inside of a team dynamic. And I have seen that sometimes that makes it decisions can be delayed because you're waiting on the team so you can find out
yes.
what best serves everyone. So I think when you look at servant leadership, if you had to go with one of the cons to it, it's like it's not something that's going to be immediate. If you have an immediate issue and you need an immediate answer, it's not something that I think servant leadership is going to get away from you on that, unless you've already developed relationship, which with your people who understand that, Terry.
But and I think that's part of it is you have to have a team. I use the term mature, whether it's the individuals on the team are mature or whether they've been mixed together. Hey, I grab six folks, six new EMTs, six new, whatever from across the state or across the country, and I throw them together. This and say, hey, Walter, be the leader. This is a technique which is not really going to work out. You have to have somebody that is that team that's cooperative, that team that's mature. But I think one of the other cons that we hadn't hit on with this is if I'm constantly putting others first, John, I'm going to use the word that I know sets you off, but burnout, maybe it's fatigue, but I can get leadership fatigue that I'm always putting everybody else first. I'm always taking care of them. What about me?
Right. Well, I was going to say, if you have that style and you're always doing that, it especially in today's mental health driven sort of EMS world we're in, this could contribute to that problem being even worse. Or being a servant leader could create boundary issues with people, right? How close you are with someone as you develop sort of a friendship or a close knit understanding what it is to make something work, may end up push those type of boundaries to understand that someone needs something that isn't necessarily a contribution in the professional nature, and you make those decisions in a professional nature to do something, but considering the personal effect that it has on someone sometimes can cause issues with that. I also think that the servant leadership style kind of tones down any sort of disciplinary aspects you have of it because you're constantly looking to serve. And if you are constantly looking to help that team serve, it may be harder for you to look at it through a model of any sort of disciplinary process, correction, those type of things. When you meet that resistance from someone that's very not this way it's going to be, and you're trying to get them to be like, we talked about, the safety thing that comes up, and you got to be autocratic. And if you've historically always been a servant style leadership and everybody sees that, to see that autocratic thing may trigger something out of them. It'll be like, this ain't the Walter I know and love. This is a different Walter, and sometimes that could be, I think, difficult to overcome.
I think then that's when you, as a person, as a leader, you have to be comfortable in your own skin when you have to trigger that part. Because when you people please, which is somewhat servant, you can cross that line into people pleasing. And some people will take advantage of that. So you really, in reality, we have to have a mix of all of it. There has to be a balance.
Well, and I think that you have to have, I think each person has their one certain style. John
Right,
has
that
his one
they're going to
certain
lead
style.
with.
I have my one certain style. Terry has one certain style. You have yours. Everybody else out here is listening has theirs. But I think we have to be able to adapt to others and use others as needed and be able to make that autocratic decision when we need to, be able
Right.
to bring the democratic process in, to be transitional, to be that laissez-faire sometimes. I think you really have to have that. And the thing that people need to realize is how do they do that and how do they make that work and not just get stuck in that one.
So what I'm hearing from you, Walter, is sometimes we have to be a little charismatic.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's going back to that blend. So we've circled all the way back around to the very beginning of what Terry said, and that is situation. Based on a situation,
Correct.
I may have to pull from several different ones to know that. But this is coming from the mouth of experienced folks that's been doing this a while. And as we have seen and found over time, that is not necessarily the folks that are taking the seat today. Today it is younger folks having to come in, less experienced, being managed by less experienced, because for the various reasons, the industry just changed. So you don't have that. So it may take some time. How much damage gets done while you transform, right? How much damage gets done to everybody? How many careers do I got to cost for my well-being, for me to learn? I need to be a situational coach, servant leader, and I think that's where things like this, talking about the approach to these things, could be beneficial to anyone that's listening. Like, hey, I'm not a leader, but I want to be one day, or I'm not a manager and I want to be one day. What should I do that's best for me on that? And that's sort of the reason of talking about the positives and negatives, the pros and the cons of these different styles.
So let me ask. I mean, I think all four of us will give, but let me, as we start to wind down, Walter, what's that advice? Walter, and then Kathia, and then John. What's your advice for that new leader for figuring out those leadership styles, or when to be a leader, when not to be a leader? Walter, it's an easy question, I know.
Oh, it's just a wonderful, easy question. I I think people don't realize, and we are in. Yeah, this is what I will tell you. I think people are in school and don't realize what type of leadership style and or if they even have a leadership style. So we're sending paramedics students out not knowing
Correct.
what their leadership style is.
Correct.
And unfortunately, in the educational system, we're getting them from high schools that don't know what type of leadership style they may even be. And we're trying to train them to be able in this EMS world that's completely different, that they may stay in 3 years, they may stay in 5 years, and then we're having to figure out somebody else. So, I don't have a good answer for it except, you know, taking classes and trying to figure out what your leadership style is, listening to podcasts like this to be able to try to figure out what it is, to be able to
Shameless plug.
spawn your brain, do what famous plug,
Shameless plug. Good job,
to be
Walter.
able to find what your leadership style is and then how to adapt to other ones as you need to. And, that is very hard to be able to do. But the first thing is you've got to want to be able to do it. If you don't care and you're not worried about what yours is, then you're not going to be able to figure out what you need to change and what you need to do. So I think that's the biggest thing is you got to figure out where to start at to be able to start something to better figure out what you got, and then learn about it to better figure out how to go through. When I was in high school, there was clubs and there
Wagons,
was,
horses,
huh?
black
Shut up, John.
electricity,
You're older
bathrooms
than
were
you're
out in
still
the
older than I am.
woods.
But there was clubs, so we had an idea and we had leadership things in club. And I'm going to use F
Future
Future
farmers
Future
of
farmers
Farmers
of
of
America.
America.
America. I can't say it
Fake
right this
farmers.
minute. I was getting
Yeah,
ready to
fake
jack it
farmers.
all up. So,
Justin Pretty, how you doing? Look, Walter's
Justin
jacking
Pretty,
up your
right?
organization.
So, and that's
Just
who
letting
I
you know.
think about, when I say that, because, they still do a lot on leadership and team building and team working. And I think that's what our schools are missing, um sometimes. And people keep saying that we're getting out of this COVID world. No, we haven't got out of COVID world yet. The second graders are getting out of the COVID world. Third graders will be getting out of COVID world next year. So we're still have a while to go where people lost some of that stuff. So
Residual damage.
correct. But heck,
Okay.
recent inauguration, they were even talking about that, how things have changed in 4 years from even on like an inauguration, how things have
I can't believe.
changed
Don't bring
in
up the
four
election of
years.
me and Terry. We're not over it yet.
I'm not talking, I'm
Yeah,
not, y'all
that's a
not over it.
lot, a lot to still.
Y'all are not over that yet,
Oh
but y'all
my
still
Lot to
cry a
still.
goodness.
little
Well, we've
more
started scheming for
tears.
2028.
Oh,
Kathia, let's your advice. Yeah,
oh
Kathia,
goodness.
since Walter
There is no right answer.
went
At the
on.
end of the day, you have to be humble. That I think That's so shameless plug to the Leadership Academy. I sought it out because I kept hitting a wall. I had to change. Something wasn't working with my crews, with my teams, and I knew the change was going to come from me. And so I sought out different ways and classes and things like that to try to learn different ways because it can't always just be one way. And it was a very humbling experience and still is because I'm still growing. So there's that. Be humble.
Um,
Oh, that's a great. John, be humble, please. Your advice.
Oh,
I actually
I mean that. I
think
feel like this is
of
about to hurt.
think of the my
Oh,
advice to folks is look beyond the problem. Patch Adams, remember that movie? In the very beginning, there seems to be a little skit or something that's going on.
Never,
Like you're
never heard of her.
focusing, you're
what?
focusing on the problem. You look beyond the problem. And so one of the things that I would say to folks is what are the ramifications for the decision that you make? What are the ramifications? What happens after this? Can I see beyond? And if your answer is I don't know what happens after I tell this person to F off. Well, I can Google that for you and give you some things that might happen if you was to do that. And so there's probably not gonna, none of them is going to be positive. So if you're also hollering at people, for instance, you raise your voice, again, looking beyond the problem, like calm down, relax, look, focus, don't focus on the problem, focus on the outcome of what you're trying. And sometimes this is what I've learned. It is just as simple as it may be a situation where you're just listening people need to fire off at something, and there's no solution that you're supposed to give. You're only supposed to listen. So I would say, don't focus on the problem. Focus on the beyond. Look beyond the problem.
But yeah, I think it's the root of the problem, not the problem. What's the root of the problem?
I think my advice would be think of whoever you love the most, except in John's case because that's John Wilson. And so think of whoever you love the most. And so Kathia, if this was one of your sweet babies, how would you want them? Walter, if this was little Miss Kate in another 10, 15, 20 years, John, if this was one of your children, how would you want them to be treated? And sometimes we have to be that leader that's going to transform somebody to be bigger than what they are right now. Sometimes they're that autocratic stop. This is not, you're going to hurt yourself. And sometimes we've got to be democratic. And so that's probably what my advice would be whoever you love the most other than yourself, whether it's your mama, your daddy, your daughter, your son, your wife, or your husband,
Mine is
or
Brad.
maybe all of those. Well, mine's probably Keith. Yeah.
That golden rule. Do unto others as you want done to you.
Yeah.
I don't know if we made this better or worse.
No telling.
Guess what? We talked about it.
Tune in next week for whether or not this became better or worse.